fact, Jesus goes on to say here that sacrificial love is the greatest authentication. The greatest authentication. Nothing proves our connection to Jesus like this. Notice he says in verse 35, after this new commandment, love one another. Verse 35, by this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. This is it. This is the evidence. This is the proof. And when you love one another at home, at loving people that aren't loving you at home is glorious. It's evidence. Loving people that aren't loving you at work or at church or in the streets or online or out of state or overseas. Loving one another means all believers I meet everywhere. All believers everywhere. That's the scope of my responsibility. I am to love all believers everywhere. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And without it, nothing matters. We have these Act Like Men conferences going, and boy, it's really something. It started off with just a desire to teach our own men. I was kind of studying through the scriptures and getting a message ready for our men at one of our men's conferences, and I was so gripped by this 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14. I've never talked to the ladies about it, but it says, watch, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. And God so used it here that I preached it at some other men's conferences around the country, and just God seemed to really have his hand on it. And so we launched these 3 conferences kind of as a test to see what God would do, and we're just blown away. We had, I think, about 7,000 men in Hamilton, and we had, it was an awesome God event, one of the best things I've ever had a privilege of being part of. It was incredible out in Long Beach, where we had about 4,500 men show up there. I've never been in a room with that many people anywhere so far from home. And then now, incredibly, it's been closed for probably 2 weeks now. We have over 11,000 men, including 1,000 of our own men in this church, are going to go to Indianapolis here in a couple of weeks, and maybe someday we'll get to do one of these events right here in Chicago. That would be awesome. But all of that to say this, I kind of, with some of these other pastors, Greg Laurie and Mark Driscoll and Matt Chandler, and Lecrae's been part of it, but I got to sort of pass out the topics. And I didn't want to speak on watch. I didn't want to speak on stand firm in the faith. I didn't want to speak on be strong. I got to pick. And what I picked is what God has been on me about for 5 or 6 or 7 years, if you've been listening. And what God's been on this church about. Let all that you do be done in love. And I open the men right up to 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels and don't have love, I'm nothing. There's no glory in that. And if I have all mystery and all knowledge, and if I give my body to be burned even, just lay it down, and I don't love, nothing. It's nothing. It's not like you get a B on that report card. You don't even get an F. You don't get a report card. You mean everything I did? Right. It's all nothing if you don't love. You can watch, as the men are being exhorted to do, to watch over their families. But if they don't do it in love, it's nothing. You can stand firm in the faith. I know a lot of people who are standing firm in the faith. I was one of them. Years gone by. You can stand firm in the faith, but if you're not loving in the way you stand firm in the faith, it's nothing. You can be strong. You can take a stand. You can fight for what's right. But if you're not loving, what is it? Say it. It's nothing. And so what a joy to preach to these men and preach to myself and preach to our church. Let all that you do be done in love. By this, Jesus says, everyone will know that you're my disciples. By this. By this. Wow. So the way your sister, and how's my sister going to find Jesus? Well, honestly, interestingly, it's not so much about how you love her. It's about how you love us. That's what she's watching. Do they have something we don't have? And your boss, man, how's my boss? My boss is so hard-hearted. How's he ever going to find Jesus? Well, interestingly, what he's really paying attention to is how we love each other. I just so love my neighbor to come to church with me. Well, what they're watching is not how you treat them. We're so focused on that. But Jesus says the way that they're going to know that we have something glorious, the way they're going to see, say it, the way they're going to see evidence for God and that's why the enemy is always attacking at the point of our relationships with each other. Because that's where it's game on. That's where it's litmus test. That's where it's proof or not. Our love for each other. Our sacrificial love for each other. It's the greatest authentication.